to see draft legislation excluding the former Prince Andrew from the line of succession?
So we're not ruling anything out around this, but we have obviously got a live police investigation underway, so we'll not be setting out further steps until the police have been able to do their work and wherever that investigation, wherever the evidence takes them.
But so you're up for this, and also presumably advising the King to remove him from the Privy Council?
So we've said that we have to keep all of these options available to us, but you'll appreciate that because we have a live police investigation underway, it's right that the police are allowed to do their job. Once that is concluded, then of course we'll consider, in discussion with the royal family, with the King, what further action is needed. But I do just think as well, in all of this, we really shouldn't lose sight of where this began. And where this began was with young women and girls being exploited over an extended period of time by a network of very powerful men. And we can't ever forget that.
Well, indeed. And it is being said this morning that this whole affair needs a wider investigation. One of the suggestions is that there should be an independent judge-led inquiry. Now, I know that that's probably not something that's been discussed specifically, but do you think that government will be open to that?
We'll look at any sensible proposals that do come forward, but it's premature at the moment because we do have the police doing their work. They need to have the time and space to do so. As the King set out, no one is above the law, and it's right that the police go wherever the evidence takes them. So that has to be the focus at the moment.
Does it make you... I mean, you rightly said that we shouldn't forget, and at the centre of this is the fate of what we now know to be probably hundreds of young women who were exploited, trafficked and so on by Epstein and his circle, that it was Virginia Giuffre who essentially has made all of this happen by her willingness to speak out and so on. Why do you think that we keep veering away from all of that?
I think because over a very, very long period of time, and what we're seeing here is sadly nothing new, we don't listen to women who come forward and report abuse. We don't believe victims and survivors. And sadly, we've lived in a world and in a society where even where people do come forward, action hasn't followed through the criminal justice system. So this is part of that wider, huge challenge we face as a country around violence against women and girls that doesn't just happen here, of course, it happens around the world. And that's not new, but it's something we do have to take much more seriously. And we can't ever lose sight of the women, the girls who have suffered appalling abuse at the hands of people who clearly thought they could get away with it, operate with impunity. And frankly, they did for many, many years. And we've seen it here in this country, we see it abroad. Yes, in this case, it's rich and powerful individuals, but it's people in positions of power and authority. And I always look at the cases that come in where we're seeing child sexual abuse. I see every case that comes in to the department when a report is made of a serious case. And the themes are clear. We don't listen to children. We don't take action. We don't work together to protect them. And some of the legislation that I've been bringing forward and we as a government have been bringing forward are so that we don't just talk about learning the lessons. If I hear that phrase one more time, I might smash something. We always say, let's learn the lessons. No, we know what we need to do. We need to listen to children. We need to work together. It's everyone's responsibility. Let's just do what we know needs to happen, not just constantly talk about it.
I want to come back to the issue of children in a moment, but before that, let's have a word about the other, if you like, big issue this weekend. After a Supreme Court ruling, Mr. Trump has imposed another 15% set of tariffs. What impact is that going to have on the United Kingdom? And does the agreement that we have for cars, I think, pharmaceuticals, does that still stand?
So we did secure that deal, which is in our interest. It's in the interest of British business. This is a fast-evolving issue in response to the Supreme Court judgment. And what I can say is that we are having conversations right at the very, very highest levels to make sure that what we regard as being in our national interest is heard loud and clear in those conversations with our American counterparts.
Yeah, but I didn't hear in anything that Mr. Trump said, oh, and by the way, we're going to impose these tariffs on everybody except the British. Now, after all of the efforts that the Prime Minister's manifestly gone to become the Trump whisperer and to be Donald Trump's mate and all of that, it's not showing much result, is it? I mean, you know, we're getting slapped like everybody else.
So we did secure a preferential deal. Through the work that the Prime Minister has been leading in engaging with the US government and with President Trump, we would hope and expect that to continue. But these discussions are ongoing. This is an evolving situation. But of course, we want to secure the best possible deal for British businesses. I understand the uncertainty it does cause for them.
Yeah,
but they can be assured that we will always be working to make sure they get everything that they need.
Yeah, but he's not being very nice to us. I mean, he's basically told us, get lost on the Chagos deal. I mean, what are we going to do about these tariffs? It's all very good to have, you know, whatever it is, the velvet glove, but are we ever going to show the steel fist? Are we going to retaliate on these tariffs on American businesses?
But we'll always stand up for what's right for Britain, and I think the Prime Minister demonstrated that with the approach that we took around Greenland. But the reality is that if you want to get things done, it's better to do that behind the scenes.
They haven't given up on Greenland yet.
Well, the Prime Minister was clear in the approach that we as a country will take in respecting their
Mr. Trump
sovereignty.
has not yet said, oh, yeah, we've got Greenland sorted because you said you're going to send some troops. He still wants Greenland. He's still going to smack us with 15%.
But you asked me, will we set out our position very clearly? We have set out our position very clearly.
Retaliate, whether we would impose tariffs.
Well, no, you talked about the approach in whether you take a hard approach or a more nuanced approach or whether that's softer. It has to be a combination of all of those things. But in reality, you get more done when you are prepared to have serious conversations, often not in front of cameras or out there in the public, but actually behind the scenes, working closely between governments. And we do have a really strong relationship with the US. That is something that is not about one president or one prime minister. It's about that long-standing and enduring relationship that is right for our country and is right for national security, and also really important at a time when we see significant global instability, that we work together on those key questions like defence. And, you know, we're talking a lot about Ukraine as we approach that anniversary of the commencement of the war. That's where we need to be working together to make sure we secure an enduring peace.
Well, in that case, actually, if we are so close and, you know, so lovey-dovey with the Americans, when they request use of UK bases in any attack on Iran, we're going to say yes, aren't we?
I'm not, and no government minister would comment on hypotheticals about the potential use of military force or how the shape that would take.
And you'll appreciate, in principle, if we're great mates with them and they say, oh, can we use our RAF Akrotiri or can we refuel in Norfolk or whatever it is, this great relationship means that we would say yes, doesn't it?
We have a long and enduring defence relationship, but you'll appreciate ministers will not comment on potential military intervention or military planning. That's not a responsible thing to do. It just tells our enemies what we're thinking. So I'm not going to go any further on that.
Well, it tells Donald Trump that actually he can't quite rely on us, because I think he would expect you to say this morning, yeah, of course.
Well, we work closely. We always will. We share intelligence. We've got the most deep and long enduring relationship where it comes to sharing intelligence and defence. We work very, very closely, but no government minister is going to talk to you at any point about, you know, potential military planning.
John Healey says this morning that he wants to be Defence Secretary that sends British troops to Ukraine because the war is ended, and he says he would like it to be ended in 2026. What are the chances that we'll see British boots on the ground by this Christmas?
Well, what the Defence Secretary was saying about wanting to see British troops on the ground is that will happen when we've secured a lasting peace through negotiation for Ukraine. That's what we all want to see. And, you know, every day we see the Ukrainians suffering significant losses. We see the impact it has on the Ukrainian people. We want an enduring and a lasting peace. And we as a country have set out our commitment to playing our part together with the French and others in putting in place those guarantees so that when a peace is secured, we can make sure that it's upheld.
By the way, what is the government actually now going to do about the Chagos Islands? I mean, is the deal on or is it off? Will the Americans agree to it or not? What is the status now?
We continue to believe that a deal is right for our country, right for the interests of national security. That continues to be our position. And the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has been discussing this very, very recently, just in recent days, with her US counterpart.
Oh, great. All right, let's talk about your area. There are 1.7 million children with special educational needs. Nearly 500,000 of them are school pupils. They've got EHC, education and healthcare plans. And that's up more than 10% year on year. It's been going up for a decade. The proportion of children with EHC plans has increased. What is happening here? Is this better diagnosis, more reporting, or are children just becoming more fragile?
So tomorrow we'll be setting out our plans around our schools white paper and our SEND reforms, and they are all focused on how we can deliver better support where children need it and when they need it. And this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver a much better system of support for children, all children within our schools. Now, to your question, part of what we've seen is that support for children with SEND has been treated almost as an entirely separate issue rather than it being integral to our school system. Lots of children at some point during their school lives will experience some form of challenge, will need extra support. But the system that we have at the moment, the system that came about after 2014, is one that has made it the case that in order to get the support that children need, parents have to fight really hard to get that education, health and care plan. I've heard from so many parents just how difficult, how devastating that has been. It can take years. It's really adversarial. So we've engineered a system where in order to get that support, you have to go through that process. And what I'm determined to make happen is that children get support earlier, they get it when they need it, and that we don't wait until things have reached crisis point. And that comes to the question about earlier support, early intervention, all of the investment that we're putting into Best Start family hubs, the big expansion in early years education. We are seeing a growth in need, but that need takes many forms, and it has to be better tailored to meet what children require.
In real world, for most parents, the signal that you're actually making things change would be that the plan for their child comes through in less than months, or in some cases up to a couple of years. What's your target?
My target, my ambition is that children get support much more quickly. So to take one example, a parent I spoke to a little while ago when I visited a school in Derby, we'd be working with that school. We've got a programme that's education and health together, working with parents, working with the school, making often quite small changes that can allow for children at primary school to get what they need. I asked that parent at the end of that discussion, where were things at around diagnosis, what was happening with the education, health and care plan. And she said to me, look, the diagnosis was kind of underway and it was likely to confirm what they already knew. But actually, she didn't feel that she needed the EHCP because the support was there, the school were working with her and her child was happy in school and thriving. And that's what parents want. They don't want to spend all their time in tribunals and with lawyers and chasing all of this down.
But for parents who want to have a plan for their child with the resources that will go with it, and that's the important thing here, can they expect that typically that will come through within weeks? Because right now, it's taking months or years. Are you promising that they will be able to get an answer and a determination within weeks?
Yes, we will make sure that children get support much, much more quickly than is the case right now. And the commitment that I give to parents is that when they see all of the documents published tomorrow, what they will see is a government that is focused on delivering better outcomes for their children. I am fiercely ambitious for every child in our country. I want high standards and I want inclusion, and they have to go together. And we can't address those big challenges we see if we're sidelining significant numbers of children. And that's the system that we have at the moment. It will be better. We are investing upfront to deliver that change. And as we move from where we are now to the system that we want to bring forward, we will do that carefully, it will be phased, and we will make sure that there is that upfront investment. It's already going in, but there's more to come, and I'll be saying more tomorrow about the investment that parents will see and the change that we will bring, particularly in areas like speech and language support, educational psychology support. These people, these amazing people, spend years training to work with children. And we've set up a system where they spend hours sending emails, filling out forms, stuck in meetings. We've got to get them back supporting children. Right. So it is a question of weeks, not a question of months and years.
What are you going to do to help the graduates stuck on the so-called Plan 2 loans, which came in 2012, and which mean that some of them are now, some graduates now ending up owing more than they borrowed. I mean, it's bonkers.
Look, I recognise the challenges of the system that's there. I would just point out, I gather the Tories have had something to say about this today. That was the system.
They're going to do what sounds completely reasonable, which is not to punish people for getting a degree.
Which might sound a bit more reasonable if they hadn't been the people that had introduced this system in the first place.
Yeah. Come on,
for more than a decade, they had this system, and there are problems with it. But I would just also observe that then in the same breath saying you want 100,000 fewer people to go to university, always said, by the way, by people who themselves went to university who want to deny working class kids the chance to get on, is fundamentally wrong. You know, I do recognise the problems we've got at the system.
Yeah, you recognise it. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I'm bringing in maintenance grants for less well-off students is one thing that we have focused on. The threshold for repayment is going up this year. It will then in future years be frozen.
But you're not going to change the index, are you? You're not going to make it cheaper for the majority of these students who've been, for the last, whatever it is, 12, 14 years, stuck with these massively expensive loans.
Look, I get the problem. I see the issue. In reality, as a government, you have to look at a question of priorities and what you can do and how fast you can do it.
So they're stuck with it.
And given the shape of what we have in the public finances, this is really hard. So, but I do find it a bit rich that the people who design...
But what you're saying to those students this morning is you are going to have to pay tough titty.
So what I'm saying to those people who are now in their 20s and 30s is that we as a government are also taking action in other areas that will make a big difference to them. The ability to get on the housing ladder, expansion of childcare, a freeze and rail fares. Because these are graduates now, these are people who are out there in the world working, and there is a lot of support that we are putting in place for those people as well as others to make sure they're getting the support that they need. But you know, this isn't something that's just happened overnight. This started in 2012, 2013. So, I'm all for considering how we can look at longer-term change, but let's be honest and realistic about how we got to here in the first place. All
right, listen, last point, which is outstanding. I ask you and your colleagues pretty much every time you come on here. The Equality and Human Rights Commission sent you its guidance, which was meant to give practical effect to the ruling of the Supreme Court that inequality at sex means biological sex. They sent you that in September, I think 171 days ago. You're supposed to lay it before Parliament so employers can get on with their job. 171 days on, still hasn't seen the light of day. When are we going to see it?
So I hope to move as fast as I can. We're going through a process...
Yeah, you said that to me 6 months ago.
And it's
not that fast.
In September, we received it. There's a process we have to go through, which is the same for any government and will be the same for any minister. We consult with the devolved governments and we work through what we have received. But I want to be absolutely... Can I just interrupt you?
Because I probably have something to say about this. Having been the person in 2010, when you passed the Act, which had 218 clauses, 28 schedules, changed 100 existing laws, we published, and I personally signed off, 2,500 pages of guidance within a year. You just got to do one bit which doesn't change the law. And you've taken 6 months.
So this is the first time this has been updated in over a decade. So yes, it is important that the questions around sex and gender are properly addressed. But if I can just be absolutely clear, the Supreme Court ruling set out very, very clearly what sex means. It means biological sex. And my message to anyone out there is that they don't have to wait for the code of practice. You mentioned employers. This isn't, you'll know this isn't about employers. Employers have legal responsibilities. They need to make sure that their staff, for example, have access to appropriate changing facilities and are not subject to undue challenges at work.
Why can't you just tell them what you have just said? Because if you ask any employer, they will tell you they are waiting for the government to tell them whether somebody can decide that they are the opposite gender and use the opposite gender to their biological sex, the facilities of that sex.
Well, as you will know from your previous role, this code of practice is not about workforce regulations, workplace regulations, and is not about employers. So my message to employers, for the avoidance of any doubt, is that they should understand the Supreme Court ruling and take action. They don't need to wait for the code of practice. We will publish it. We will bring it forward. I remain absolutely committed to single-sex spaces. I used to run a women's refuge. I know how important this is. But because I did that, I know how important it is that when we publish that code of practice, it is legally robust, we minimise the risk of further challenge to that we avoid any undue uncertainty. But the Supreme Court ruling was crystal clear.
Secretary of State, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.